Money Radio, thank you for joining us today for the review. Laura Bramnick joins us now from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
Good to see you again.
Good to be here.
Laura Bramnick is an attorney and a consumer advocate and a real estate agent, and she can work to put together residential, commercial, land transactions. She holds an active Arizona real estate license. She's been a real estate investor over the years. She's a certified instructor with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. And she's also an attorney licensed through the state bar of Arizona, specializing in real estate.
Correct.
And you can represent buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants, homeowners associations, homeowners.
Correct.
Any kind of real estate transaction. Her phone number, 480-624-2705, 480-624-2705, and yes, Laura does answer her own phone.
Yes, I do.
I wanted to talk about landlord-tenant relations today.
Okay.
And I know one big area that is just a nightmare for a lot of folks, both landlords and tenants, security deposits.
Yes. A lot of people don't understand the rules and regs that control how much security deposit you have to pay if you're a tenant, or how much you can charge if you're a landlord, and then what the rules are with getting the security deposit back at the end of the tenancy. And most of it's regulated by the Arizona Residential Landlord-Tenant Act, which is available online if anybody wants to read it. And it is a legal document, but it is, and I would say the average consumer could probably understand most of it.
Okay, good.
The maximum security deposit that a landlord can ask for in Arizona is 1.5 months rent.
All right.
Okay, and however, the landlord can take other fees that are non-refundable that can exceed that total.
So 1.5 months rent as a refundable security deposit, but there may be extra fees on top of that.
Right, and the security deposit is not supposed to be used in lieu of rent. However, if the tenant leaves early and doesn't pay the rent, the landlord can keep the security deposit as payment of rent in that circumstance.
Okay.
But otherwise, the security deposit is really supposed to be for damages, with the normal wear and tear exception.
Yeah.
And
the normal wear and tear is part of the
yeah.
gray area, I suppose.
The frustration that I've seen with my clients on the normal wear and tear exception is, let's say that you have carpeting that's 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
So, and let's say the average life of carpeting is maybe 10 or 12 years. So you have carpeting that's going to be in the unit for a while. And then something happens where the tenant either has a pet that destroys the carpet because of pet stains, or maybe there's some kind of a burn in the carpet, or there's something else where the carpet has to be replaced. And in the litigation that I've done recently, the court won't order the tenant to pay the cost of brand new carpet. They'll basically depreciate the value.
Okay.
So the landlord has to put out the money for new carpet, but doesn't get all of it. And they didn't intend to replace it in the first place.
Yeah.
So, there's issues that come up that you have to realize when you're a landlord.
All right, so there is an actual security deposit that is part of the lease. It's written out, we should understand it, but then there's going to be an initial walkthrough period where everybody's looking
Yes.
at the apartment and agreeing, hey, well, this is a problem over here. Should somebody carry a video camera with them for something like that?
The excellent idea. There's a required a move-in checklist. And that way, if, let's say, there's a hole in one of the walls, the tenant can, indicate that. There's other things that as you know, house is, there may be other issues with the house that the landlord didn't want to fix, that the tenant doesn't mind living in that way.
And then there's a walkthrough as well at the end of the lease.
And the tenant is allowed to be there.
Okay.
And that's important because what happens is the landlord goes in and the tenant says, well, he's making that up. That's not true, kind of thing. And so now with cameras, especially right on your telephone and video, it's a lot easier to prove what actually happened.
And documented on the checklist as well.
And documented on the checklist. Now, once the lease is terminated, the law says that the tenant has to actually make a formal demand for the return of their security deposit. It's just not automatic, which I found interesting.
Okay.
And it can be as simple as, please send my security deposit to my new address.
Sure.
You know, and that's basically how it's normally done.
But it should be a written demand.
It should be a written demand, yes. And now, under the statute, the landlord has 14 days, that's 14 business days, so it's excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, to refund the amount of the security deposit that the tenant's entitled to be refunded.
Okay.
So if there's some damage, the landlord has to send a letter with a list of the damages and a check for whatever the tenant is owed.
What if the tenant says, you know, that wasn't on our document checklist, I didn't see it on my video, I disagree with what you're saying now?
Well, if the tenant feels that the amount is incorrect, meaning not enough,
Right.
so, or if, let's say, the landlord doesn't return anything and the tenant feels they're entitled, then the tenant can actually sue for 3 times the amount owed.
Okay. So, if a landlord is trying to pull a fast one on the tenant, it could be a costly error.
Yeah. Now, if the landlord gives the right amount, but gives it after 14 days, the tenant's not entitled to triple damages.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. So, a lot of things you gotta get right when it comes to the security deposit. If you don't get it right, it can be a big problem. And document it, record it, make sure that you are at those walkthroughs at the beginning and at the end.
Yes.
And you should have no problems.
Yes, hopefully not. But
I say that because I know
a lot of
everybody has problems.
yes, a lot of landlords will get a lease off the internet. They don't really understand the Landlord-Tenant Act, and then it ends up biting them later because they have to pay a lot of money.
And if you do end up having a problem, contact Laura Bramnick, because you can help with these issues.
Yes, I can.
480-624-2705, that's the phone number, 480-624-2705. The website is talkrealestateaz.com, talkrealestateaz.com, and Laura can represent landlords or tenants, but not at the same time.
That's correct.
talkrealestateaz.com and 480-624-2705, and Laura does answer her own phone. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Sinclair.